Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest edition of SuperNova Commencements. I'm your host, Kashi Sehgal. Today we have an awesome show, and it's with a friend of mine, so I'm really excited to have him with us today. But before we get there, we are going to dive into the segment we do every week, Your Career Powered by Data. And it's brought to us by our friends at Steppingblocks. And Steppingblocks also has a special relationship to our guest today, so we will point that out in a few. Okay, so you know that they have a ton of data. It's 100 million people worth of data. They can analyze trends, and you can get on and figure out how to really achieve your career goals. Today's guest is in the startup world, and it's really hard to quantify how to major in startups, right? You can't really do that. Maybe one day. So I pulled out a skill set that our speaker has in real estate. And since we haven't talked about real estate on the show, I thought it would be a good idea to highlight what it means to be in the real estate industry these days. So to be in real estate, most people get a degree in real estate or in business management. There are a lot of people in the industry, 1.72 million people in real estate. That probably counts people full-time and doing it part-time on the side, but it's a lot of people. You probably know someone in real estate. The average industry is 41, so it's a little older than what we've seen in some of our last few weeks of shows and careers. 59% are female. Top skills, real estate investing, condos, so I guess specializing in condos. And what makes the most? Real estate development, so that makes sense. You're actually a builder or developing these properties. Commercial property and leasing. Most people in the industry come from Arizona State, University of Washington, UT Austin. So some interesting schools, and so there you go. Check out the platform, and you can look up everything you're interested in on Steppingblocks. Okay, now we're at the point of the show. We're going to bring on our guest. Let me bring him on. David Lightburn, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Kashi. How are you?
Doing well. Okay, so David is co-founder and president of Atlanta Tech Village, which is a very special place. Not only is it special, but it is the fourth largest coworking or tech or innovation hub in the United States. So it is big. I remember when it was tiny, but they have had a lot of success, and a lot of it is due in part to David. So we are really lucky to have him here today. And Steppingblocks is a company that works out of Atlanta Tech Village. So, all right, David, will you please get us started and tell us where you're from, what'd you major in, where'd you go to school, all those things?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first too, like getting to know you as an OG of Atlanta Tech Village from way back in the beginning, and then Carlo with Steppingblocks and all the amazing entrepreneurs that come through here that make the village what it is. It has just been so gratifying for me. So like I get FOMO when I'm not at the village or talking with entrepreneurs.
We all do.
Something's going on, right? And I just love the energy and the type of people that are here and choose to be part of the community. So I was born in Pittsburgh. I grew up in Atlanta and Memphis, went to high school at Parkview High School out in Lilburn here in Georgia, and went to Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee. I like to tell people I'm a Rhodes Scholar, but that's not the same thing. I moved back to Atlanta to chase a girl that I ended up marrying, my wife, Ginger. So we had a long distance relationship. I moved down here. Out of school in Memphis, I worked at a healthcare company we called Smith and Nephew. I was in finance. We did trauma, rods, plates, and screws, and total knee replacements and total hip replacements. I realized there that kind of corporate world was not for me, and chose to quit and move to Georgia to chase after my wife and be closer to her girlfriend at the time. And they offered me a job in Atlanta to open up the sales office as the kind of the finance operations side of it. And so I took that and I did that. And everything kind of escalated from there. That's where I found real estate here in Atlanta.
Okay, so please walk us through. Well, that was a little bit of a high-level career journey. So you started out in corporate. What about it wasn't for you?
Just being another cog in the wheel, and for me, the way Smith & Nephew operated was, it was clear that there were a lot of people with tenure, and that the promotions were happening based on how long you had been there for the most part, and less about performance. And so just realized that, one, the amount of impact that I'm going to be able to have at the end of the day on the company is just so small, being a small piece of this large company that does these trauma rods and plates and screws and things, that I just wanted to have a bigger impact. And I knew that kind of climbing the career ladder there was just going to take too many years, and I wasn't ready for that. So I was looking. I'd always been entrepreneurial leading up to that. I knew that I thought that I needed to know and learn business for many years before I started my own thing, though. So that's what the idea out of school was. Hey, let me take this corporate job. I'll learn a bunch. I'll learn what I need to know about business, and then I can start my own thing, or I can take over a business at that point.
That's funny. I felt the same way. That's why I went corporate and then not.
Right. Well, and I think the thing is, like, you never know enough, right? Like, there's always more information to know. I still feel like I just know I'm just scratching the surface of what is out there. So the key for me was realizing, and this came later on, when I met David Cummings, was just, hey, just get started. Hey, like, what, you don't need to learn anything more. Just get started.
Such an important tip for anything in life. Just do it.
Just do it.
Right? I mean, yes. Nike came up with the best slogan ever, right? Just do it. Like, why are you, do some research, but then
Absolutely.
Do it.
Jump in. Yep.
Okay. So you mentioned real estate. I'd love to hear more about how you got into real estate, and you also started your own company.
Yep.
And so could you please talk to us about how you started the company and why, and like, how did you even figure it out?
Yeah. So I got into real estate after we bought our first house, after I married my wife, Ginger, and we bought a house. We used a family member as our agent. We had a terrible experience. I started learning about as much about real estate as I could along the process to figure out what I should have known when we purchased. And I realized I had a real passion and a love for it. And so I'm always I'm a lifelong learner. So podcasts and books and blogs and whatever I could get my hands on. And so I even said, hey, I'm just going to get my real estate license, because maybe I'll learn all the things I should have known by getting my real estate license. But I really didn't have a desire to actually become an agent. But I just got more and more passionate about it. So I did get my license. I did become an agent. I sold 2 houses the first year, and 2 houses is not enough to actually sustain a mortgage and car payments and growth there. So I realized very quickly that I needed to do something different. I needed to get online. I needed to try some other methods, because as an inexperienced agent, very young, with no sales record, a lot of people wouldn't take a chance on me. So I needed to differentiate myself in some way. And that came by going online and creating lead generation kind of forms and websites and content early on to try to build a platform. And so what I ended up starting a company called Clickscape, which did lead generation for real estate agents, because it was a problem that I had experienced myself. And I knew, especially for new agents, it was something that was really hard to do on your own. And so I wanted to share that learning, share that experience. I didn't want anybody else to go through the same thing that I did. It was really stressful trying to know where your next commission is going to come from. And so I really wanted to share that with other agents, but also I wanted buyers and sellers to have a better experience. Real estate agents notoriously have a terrible NPS score, and so no net promoter score, and so they and customer satisfaction. And so I wanted to make sure that every buyer and seller on the other side of the table had an agent that they were happy with, that was doing right by them, that weren't incompetent or part-time or in it for the wrong reasons, that could actually provide great service to them. So I thought if I could curate the right kind of agents and provide them the right kind of leads, then we could solve both for buyers and sellers and also for agents. So that's something that I became really, really passionate about.
So at the root of it, it was solving a problem.
Absolutely.
Finding a need and then solving a problem.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And a lot of entrepreneurs become business owners. I make that distinction for a reason, but become business owners because they see a problem out in the world that they're experiencing, and they think, hey, you know what? I can fix this. So what is entrepreneurship to you? Speaking of.
Man, so yeah, I mean, I think that is it is the single greatest, in my mind, the single greatest mechanism for changing the world, right? So our local communities, team members' lives, customers' lives, both here locally and then globally as well. So entrepreneurship gives you such an amazing way to make an impact in so many other people's lives and leave a legacy and do well by doing good, both even for-profit businesses. I love that. I think that there's when people are considering what to do, I think entrepreneurship, it's tough, and it's really sexy right now to say I'm an entrepreneur, right? Or I'm a founder. And it's easy to say, and it looks like there's a lot of overnight successes, but those overnight successes take 5, 7, 10 years of grinding. You know yourself, like it takes a while. It's hard work, but it's such rewarding work. And it is, so yeah, that's what it is to me. It's a single greatest mechanism available to us in this world to be able to make a lasting impact in our communities.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. So let's talk about Atlanta Tech Village.
Let's do it.
A huge space, 55,000 square feet of space.
103,000 square feet.
103,000 square feet of space.
That's right.
Okay. So why build a space? I mean, it's a huge undertaking, right? How did you come to decide that a building was the right way to go? And how was that a better idea than building out maybe an online community? And could you tell us also what ATV is? So for people who don't know, I'm just assuming that everybody knows how amazing ATV is. But let's start with, what is Atlanta Tech Village, and then why Atlanta Tech Village?
Absolutely. So Atlanta Tech Village is a tech entrepreneurship center, startup center. So a hub. We have over 300 plus startups. Pre-COVID, over 1,200 members, and we exist to help startups have a better chance of success. So a lot of that is done through a community that facilitates faster connections to talent, capital, and ideas. And a lot of time, early stages of the business, for entrepreneurs, those are the big stumbling blocks, or the obstacles, the things you have to figure out, those faster connections to talent, capital, and ideas. And so the reason then, so two big overarching goals for us: 10,000 jobs to come through the village in the first 10 years. We're over 8,000 right now so far, thanks to great companies like SalesLoft and Calendly and CallRail and QA Symphony that have all built enormous BitPay that have built enormous businesses and continue to grow. And very fortunate that we've had a front row seat to watch them grow along the way and help in that. So 10,000 jobs, and to help fuel Atlanta's rise as a top 5 tech startup city. So it's a double bottom line for us. We want to make a profit for the business, but it's also about how do we help enrich Atlanta's position nationally so that it gets recognized for all the great stuff we have going on here. Atlanta has so much, so many of the great and needed ingredients for innovation, both with with the low cost of living here, the students in the university system, which is incredible, the executive and Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 talent and potential customers, the airport, et cetera. So there's just so much going on with Atlanta. We want to help play our part in help elevating the city on the national scene. And so why a building? At the time, there wasn't a pandemic, so being a high density building with a lot of other entrepreneurs doesn't sound as terrible as it sounds right now. But I think that will continue to morph over time. But right now, or at the time, the whole thing is about serendipity, right? Like if you get enough great people in the building, we have 4 core values: be nice, dream big, pay it forward, and work hard, play hard. So if you get the right kind of entrepreneurs and their team members in the building, then magic happens because they're willing to pay it forward and help others. And so they're running into people in the kitchens, in the hallways, in the shared space, and are helping each other. And so we don't even have to be the central node for those faster connections to talent, capital, and ideas. We have 1,000+ members that are willing to do that for each other. And so all of these connections and these collisions are happening throughout the day that are best practices, right? Like here's what I learned as being an entrepreneur that I'm sharing with somebody else, or I know someone who can help fill that position, or I know an investor, or even if it's failing faster, right? Like if you can accelerate the process in startups, capital is a constraint, but the biggest thing that's against you is time, and you need to move as quickly as possible. And we hopefully allow that to happen by accelerating all those connections for people and having a building where that serendipity can happen. You can have some of that online, but having those connections in real time in one place is really just magical.
Yeah, I can personally speak to just bumping into someone at the elevator and becoming partners or like working together down the road. That's happened. And that it's hard for that to happen online.
It is.
You mentioned the village's ideals, and a lot of companies come up with values or ideals that they live by, but they don't really live by them. Mm-hmm. How have y'all been able to stay committed to these ideals? And do you think that's part of what your success has been as a space?
I mean, I think so. I think so. When we examine at least all our major decisions that we make, we're always looking at mission, vision, values, right? Like, so what is our vision for Atlanta and for the village? What is our mission to help make that happen? And then what are our values, our core values, both as a community and what kind of entrepreneurs and teams we want here, but also internally as a team, what our values are and how we're going to execute on it. So we bake it into the process, both when we're doing interviews and tours with potential new members. Just because we have office space available and you need space doesn't mean that's necessarily going to happen. We want to make sure that you're going to be a good culture fit for the. I think it's a willingness to turn away revenue, and there's always a tension, right? As an office space, as a membership, we want to make money that way, but we also want to make sure we have the right members in here, and we're not willing to make concessions on for short-term revenue to damage the long-term reputation of the village and the community, so that the right types of entrepreneurs down the road decide, I don't want to come there because there's some bad apples, or it's not the right kind of community, or it gets diluted. So it's really, really important that we preserve that as much as possible. Yeah.
So, okay, I have to ask about
You're not one of the bad apples. You're one of the great people. That's why people come to the village, because people like Kashi and Carlo are there.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sure.
So, and we come because David is there, right? So he's leading the show, and Karen and all the other amazing people. Okay, so we have to talk about these unicorns that you keep popping out of the village. Okay, so Sales Loft, an example of a company that just raised a round and was valued at over $1 billion. Calendly just raised a round and is valued at over $3 billion. I mean, it's like B with a B, billion with a B. Like,
that's right.
It's mind blowing. Did you ever imagine? I mean, you mentioned CallRail and BitPay, and there's been so many companies that have done well, been acquired in different ways. Rigor and Insight Pool going way back in the day, Yik Yak. How do you create an environment, or how do you foster the success of companies that grow to be these amazing Atlanta stories? I mean, most people can't produce one of those. So how is it that ATV has just like got such a high batting average?
Well, we were joking earlier, but it's the free drinks and snacks for sure. You know, it's the freestyle machine in the kitchen and all the snacks and goodies that we have here. No, I mean it's really
and the ping pong. Don't forget
and the ping pong, right? And the gaming system. Like, so we want to make it like a fun environment, but it really is the types of entrepreneurs. I always go back. It's, you know, the village is what it is because of the community of entrepreneurs and founders that call it home and are willing to help each other. And so I think that just attracts certain types of entrepreneurs. And we've been we try to pour into them as much as possible to help create those connections to talent, capital, and ideas. And then, you know, when the time is right, we, you know, graduate them out and send them on their way, and they're off to do their things. But we try to act as kind of, you know, we kind of act like an incubator, although there's no equity exchange. There's no, we don't require anything other than just membership, but we want to act like that and create the best environment for them to grow and nurture and really take the next step. So there's a bit of the magic there. But it's the community that really kind of pushes everyone forward.
Totally. We talked about the village's values. What are your values, or what is your purpose that drives you as you go through life?
Man, well, I mean, the biggest thing for me right now, so I've got 3 kids. And so everything I do with my wife of 16 years and my 3 kids who are 13, 11, and 8, everything's centered around them. Those are the real startups. And those are ones that are way harder in my experience than just regular startups. But, you know, everything that I do is, centered around the kind of the values of family life and making sure that I'm there and I'm setting a good example for my kids, and I'm being a good husband to my wife. So, you know, that's the most important thing to me.
Yeah. You also mentioned, I just want to ask quickly about the 10,000 jobs that your goal is to create in like 10 years. You're so close. Entrepreneurship can really move an economy forward. And that's a huge goal. I mean, to start at the beginning of something like this, what gave you the foresight to make such a big goal and, you know, try to move Atlanta's economy forward?
It was just kind of a dream big. And I have to credit, you know, David Cummings for that. That's something that, you know, as a mentor to me and a friend, he's really taught me. Like, I used to think that I dreamed big and thought big, and, you know, he just thinks on another level of 10x or 100x, and how are we going to be able to really make a huge impact. And so he's really, you know, instilled that in me. And so that was always the goal from the beginning, is like, hey, you know, we can make Atlanta a top 10, maybe even a top 5 startup city over a 20 or 30 year horizon. And so when you have someone like him as the owner, and who's able to, with his ability from his success from Pardot and his exit, to be able to fund the village, so we don't have the red tape, the yellow tape, all the other stuff. We can kind of, and we do have the autonomy too from him to say, hey, listen, here's what we want to get done. He's very, very supportive of those ideas, and really also like, hey, how can we make that even bigger, even better, even more of an impact? So that's just, we're very fortunate to have someone like that, who's kind of leading the charge and has that kind of grand vision from the beginning. And so it was just this kind of way of seeing it through his eyes, and just opened up, doors for me that I hadn't seen before.
Mm-hmm. I do have to just mention that David Cummings, co-founder of the Village, he, you know, when you talk about pay it forward, the Village was an attempt at paying forward to Atlanta some of the success that he had as an entrepreneur who moved to Atlanta, right? And he sold his company Pardot to a company out in California, and then they sold again to Salesforce. So, you know, being able to share some of that wisdom and experience and what it takes to really grow a company like that, it's really meaningful. And to do it at scale, I can honestly tell all of y'all listening that I started my business before Atlanta Tech Village existed. And there was not a tech community, a startup community, an entrepreneurship community that exists like it does today in Atlanta. And most of that is credited, I think, to Atlanta Tech Village and y'all just saying, let's do it. Let's just create something and let's see where we can take it. So this is really a testament to just having a great idea and putting it into action. So I want to say thanks, but I know there are a lot of other people that do too. Huh?
Thank you for that. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the same when David shared the vision of this entrepreneurship hub, like for Atlanta, because it's a problem that it was something that I had. I was starting Clickscape with him. And so I was working out of the Pardot offices and I saw how this kind of community would help grow and how this needed to exist. And when he said, here's what I'm thinking, can you help? I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is solving another one of my own problems. I need community with other entrepreneurs. And it just seemed like just a no-brainer. And so I jumped in. And there's another thing here as just kind of think as students or as graduates, just saying yes to things, even if you don't know where it's going to lead. When David shared the vision with me, can you help me buy a building, me being in real estate? I said yes. And then I also said, I want to be involved. This is something that I'm struggling with too as an entrepreneur. I want to, he's like, great. Like we need people like that. And I don't know if that happens if I don't say, let me be involved. Like I want to be a part of this. I believe in what you're saying here. And that's really kind of a consistent theme throughout my life of just saying, yes, like I don't know where this is going to go, but I think that there's something here and I respect the people that I'm with here and I want to do something and I want to be a part of it and not knowing where it's going to go. So kind of having a plan, but also allowing it to emerge out of opportunities that come along the way and just have your eyes open for those has been really crucial for me.
Yeah. And like you said so well, put yourself in play, volunteer, put your hand up because people don't always know that you want to be involved. You can't just assume that they know. You have to actually voice it.
Yes.
So that is such a great lesson. Okay, we have a ton of questions coming in, so I want to make sure we get to those. Let's start with, okay, John would like to know, what is the hardest part of starting your own company, and was there something surprising for you?
So for me personally, just how hard it was, because I also like entrepreneurship, being your own boss. It sounds so cool. There's just so much work that goes in just to the even details, right? Of setting up your LLC and like the tax stuff and employees, like the hiring and stuff. So it can be very, very overwhelming. And then also you get this kind of, curve with entrepreneurship. You're up on a high and then you're down low, and then you get this kind of this trough of disillusionment. You're really this high initially about like the idea that you have, and it's going to be great. You haven't really gotten into the work yet, but you're passionate and you're going to make an impact. And then everything sets in about how much work it's going to be, and maybe people aren't responding the way that you thought they might, right? And you're down here in the valley for a while, right? So that's really, really tough, and it's usually something that's really hard. Your friends and family, they want to help you with that, but if they're not an entrepreneur and they have a 9-to-5 job or they're not familiar with the entrepreneurial life, it's really hard for them to really have that kind of empathy and to commiserate with you and provide the kind of support and answers that you need. So finding a group of entrepreneurs, either that are ahead of you, beside you as peers, behind, but someone who also has gone through the struggle with you, and to have that, a lot of the village too can be just kind of therapeutic, right? Man, like I've had a really bad day, like this deal fell through and I can't figure out this thing with my tax. I gotta have to fire this other person. And like having someone else to sit down and say like, I've been there. I know. And here's what works for me. That's so helpful. And I didn't have that early on. So you just felt kind of isolated and alone. And so that can be tough, but there's so many communities and places that you can plug into and get that kind of advice and mentorship and help and peer to peer, that it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, having the village and support systems like that just can make all the difference.
It really can.
It makes you feel less alone, because it is very lonely to be a founder, right?
Yes.
Okay, this actually speaks to something that you just mentioned. Emily wants to know, how do I learn more about the legal stuff that I don't know for my startup? It's a great question.
That is a great thing. So I would talk to an attorney, and a lot of them will just have conversations with you without having, especially like here at the Village, for example. So we have some advisors who give their time freely, that are kind of pay it forward, that been there, done that, and are willing just to talk it through. There's also good blogs. Like we do stuff on the Atlanta Tech Village blog about kind of the legal basics, like what do you need to know about setting up the LLC and the tax ID number and all the the business taxes, all that kind of stuff. So I would seek out some resources online from trusted sources. So you could probably start at Atlanta Tech Village there. But then there are, even going through our advisor list and finding a couple of attorneys, you'd be surprised by reaching out if it's not an open-ended question, but there's specific questions. How pay it forward most of the people in the startup community are. Most everybody will take a meeting, and that even goes for attorneys, where they'll take a meeting, help you out. Like, they're not going to give you ongoing legal service for free. That would be great. That doesn't happen, but they were willing to just chat with you, talk you through it at no cost, especially for someone, I would leverage the fact that I'm just coming out of school, or I'm in school and I'm trying to figure this stuff out. Here are my specific questions that I have. Can you help with that? And outline that. But I think you'd be really surprised how many people are willing to help.
Yeah, especially if you're asking for advice.
Absolutely.
Okay, Lauren would like to know, what advice do you have for someone just getting started as an entrepreneur?
Find a group of other entrepreneurs, find a mentor. And so finding a mentor doesn't necessarily doesn't have to be like either an in-person or like an actual relationship. So that could be with the writing of someone online. So it could be a blog or a book or another entrepreneur, but find sources of people that have been there, done that before, and are that you can learn from. So that could be from reading a lot of a particular person or people, but especially if you can find either peer-to-peer or someone who's gone there before you and is willing to meet with you once a month, once every couple of months, to kind of talk through things. That's huge. Just finding your tribe.
Great advice. Okay, I knew we were going to get a question about funding, so here we go. Yeah. Johnny wants to know, how can I raise angel or seed financing for my startup? Do I need a pitch deck? Yes.
Yes. Chances are probably yes. Yeah. Right. So especially, if you're a serial entrepreneur who's done it there before and has the success under his or her belt, maybe not. But chances are most everybody's going to need a deck. And also, to be honest, having a pitch deck is going to help you crystallize your ideas. I talk a lot about this, about writing as well, right? So people are like, I don't want to really do a blog. Well, keep a journal at home or whatever. But whenever you start writing, whether it's a pitch deck, a memo, a startup plan, it helps you crystallize your thoughts in a way and make them very clear. The exercise is even more for yourself than it is for anybody else. So I would go together. Put together a 10 to 14 page our slide pitch deck. Talking about the problem, the solution, the team, the market. There's a lot. YC's got a really good slide deck template that you can use to put together. It's really hard, even now with kind of money flowing, to get money for an idea that is pre-revenue and pre-product. And so a lot of entrepreneurs that we know start with friends and family. And I know that's not an option for everybody, but if that is an option for you, that's a great place to start to validate the idea. Another way to go about it is trying to start it on your own, but doing as much research, both primary and secondary, as you can. And so that could mean talking about the market and reading about the potential opportunity and writing about that. But it also means doing customer discovery. So talking to your potential customers there's a lot of ways now with no code tools, with spreadsheets and Google Docs and whatever, to basically, and landing pages, put together ways to calculate if there's actually demand out there, and then have conversations with those prospective customers about what their behaviors and their motivations are right now, so that you can then go to investors and say, listen, I don't have a product, but I've had 100 conversations with my potential customers, and here's how they think. Here's the insights that I learned. And now you are an expert. You've had 100 conversations. You probably know, you have insights that you've developed that maybe no one else in the world has. You've had these unique conversations that you can now use as currency to hire a CTO or someone who's willing to take a chance on you to build a product, or an investor to say, all right, this person has gone really deep on this idea and knows a lot about it. I'm going to take a chance on them. Because early on in getting funding, it's all about the team and the entrepreneur, because so much stuff is going to change over time, right? They're making a bet on you personally and less on the business idea.
Totally. That is really good advice. I don't think I've ever heard that piece of advice before. So y'all, you heard it here first. But it's true. I mean, go put that way, I should say, but like, go talk to as many people as possible and create a minimum viable idea or product.
Yep.
It doesn't always, you could do a portion of your idea and pressure test that and say, okay, well, this is flying, so maybe this other stuff will work too, given my research.
Absolutely. And the product doesn't even have to technically exist. So I'm not saying mislead or to your potential customers, but a landing page that talks about what your vision would be, right? And then say, hey, put your email in here, and we'll let you know when we release the beta product. And then you can show investors, hey, I've got 550 email signups. Or if there are people who are really excited about it, you can say, hey, put $10 down or $50 down. Anything that you can show that there's really demand out there right now, without taking, because it's going to cost a lot of money and a lot of time to build software. And anything you can do along the way to prove that demand and de-risk the process is really, really important.
Yes. And just going out and talking to people shows an investor that, to David's point earlier, just go do it.
Yes.
They want someone who's going to really go after it.
Yes.
And so you have to show them your passion. To his point, they're investing in you at the beginning. So, okay. Let's see. Sandra wants to know, how do I survive or even thrive in this new normal? That's a good question.
That's a great question. I think we're all trying to figure that out, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it goes back to me, it's like, depending on where you are in your career is, I kind of think of it as a continuum of saying yes to as many things as possible early on and opportunities. And then over time you start to filter more, right? Because it is about focus, and you have to start saying, forget the person who wrote the blog post, is escaping right now, but it is it needs to be a hell yes or it's a no for him, because he's at that part of his. Derek Sievers wrote a blog post called "Hell Yes or No," and so if he's not hell yes on an idea or a meeting or whatever, he just doesn't do it. But for a lot of people, especially right out of school, you got to say yes to almost everything. So it needs to be almost a hell no. Otherwise, it needs to be a default yes, where you're like, I need to just try it and experience it, because you never know. We all have plans about how life's going to go and what our career is going to go. And that's important, right? You should have some sort of direction, but you need to be open to emerging opportunities and other things that come around. There's a book that Clayton Christensen wrote called "How Will You Measure Your Life?" And he talks about this, how people are like companies, and you have to have a strategy. And then with your strategy, you have a deliberate strategy, but you also have an emerging strategy. So if opportunities come along, you have to, you might move your strategy to this new plan. And then your resource allocation, like how you spend your time, energy, and money, is really if you will see what's truly valued by that person if you just follow how they spend their money and how they spend their time. And another book, I didn't know this was going to be the book recommendation hour, but
we actually have a lot of questions on book recommendations.
Okay.
So Amit wants to know, and Holt is also watching, Holt Lida, and he also wants to know if you have a favorite business book or movie. So this is great.
This is great. So Atomic Habits so it's not a business book per se, but Atomic Habits by James Clear talks about how you're not learning, like, so for example, if you're going to learn to play the trumpet, you're not learning to play that. You're not really learning to play the trumpet. You're becoming a musician. It's about this, becoming the identity and having the system in place and setting the habits, less than just the outcomes, that the outcomes are going to come from the system and the habits that you put in place before. So that's something that has completely, changed my life, having routines and habits in place and focus more on the long term and the compounding effects than the short term kind of opportunities that come along that maybe are more tangible because it's a promotion or it's compensation or it's whatever. But down the road, is it really focused on what's going to move you long term to where you ultimately want to go? So I love Atomic Habits. I love that Clayton Christensen book. There's also a book called The Happiness Advantage that I read recently that talks just about how kind of paradoxically, people happiness comes before success versus people think I'm going to have success and then I'm going to be happy. But really that positivity and that gratitude and that happiness come first, and it just changes your kind of biochemistry and you become and your mindset so that you become open to new opportunities. And it's actually the happiness that becomes before the success typically.
I love that. What about a favorite movie? Business movie.
Is it the one about McDonald's? Is it the Ray Kroc? Have you guys over the last couple of years that came out? I think it was called. It was about Ray Kroc. It was really good.
Was it Tom Hanks that was in that?
It was no. Oh shoot, I forget the guy's name, but it wasn't Tom Hanks. It's a famous actor though. Yeah. And Shoe Dog as a book, the story of Nike. We talked about Just Do It earlier. Shoe Dog is a great book to listen to on Audible or to read. Highly recommend. Cool. Yeah.
I will pick that up today.
Excellent.
I love Audible.
Me too.
Get in my books while I'm running. That's multitask.
Books and podcasts. Yep. Running or doing work around the house or driving all the time.
Yep. Okay. So a few more because we're really running out of time.
Yep.
Anne wants to know how you generate new ideas.
Oh, that's interesting. All right. So, and I do a little bit of this. I'm probably not as consistent in this habit as I need to be, but James Altucher had a thing basically as part of his routine every morning. He'd give himself a topic and he'd have to come up with 10 ideas on that topic. And it could be anything. It's not new business ideas necessarily, but you have to train your brain to be thinking and seeing new opportunities around you. Because there's so much going on in our world, every day. As humans, if we took in all that stimulus all at once and continually, like we'd shut down as people. So we've become accustomed to blocking out problems and other things that kind of annoy us as a way of survival. But entrepreneurs kind of have a heightened sense of this because it gnaws at them more than the typical person. And they think like, what can I do to solve this problem? But he similarly is like, you just need to open up and change your sensitivity to problems and things around you so that you can so every morning say, hey, like, what are the top 10 things that I can do right now in my yard, or to top 10 books that I would write, or top 10 things I want to do in the next 10 years, or 10 business ideas around pets. Like, it doesn't matter what the topic is, but it's training your brain to think, and they can all be crappy ideas. That's not the point. Most of them are going to be crappy ideas, right? But the idea is just to kind of get this kind of brainstorming and flowing. So that's one thing that I do inconsistently. The other thing is reading about a lot of stuff and mixing books and reading a couple of different books at the same time, and then going for a run. And then like your subconscious kind of starts connecting stuff. I don't go out and for the run and start thinking like I need to come up with a solution, but I let it kind of marinate in the background. And most often, like stuff will come to you because it's kind of trying to connect things in the back of your mind while you're doing something else and not focused on that idea. So that really is helpful to me too, kind of stuff ideas in there, let it marinate, and then go for a run or take a long shower or do something where you turn your brain off and like stuff just kind of percolates
And marinates.
That's right.
Yeah. And that goes back to the constant learning that you talked about before, which is if you're constantly inputting things into your brain, then there are more connect points and you're going to look at the world from a different perspective, and it'll help you maybe come up with a solution to something that you've been thinking about for a while because you're looking at it through a different lens. One of the things I like to do is to read something that's not necessarily in my wheelhouse, right?
Yeah.
So like not just reading tech or like marketing or things like that, but like read something different.
Yeah.
Because it really helps you think about your world in another way.
I completely agree. Whether it's other industries or even to your point, like just reading fiction, right? Like it just makes your brain work in different ways. And I completely agree to you, like seeing through a different lens. I think Mark Twain said, there are no new ideas. They're just, old ideas shown through a kaleidoscope. So it's you like stuffing your brain with all this kind of information and sources and experience and whatever that you've seen in the world. And you're the only person who's had that set of experiences and knowledge, right? So you have a unique viewpoint that no one else has. No one else has had the exact same resources as you. And so then be able to see the world in a different way. So it just kind of opens up ideas all around you.
Yeah, totally. All right, last question, and then we're going to wrap.
Yeah.
What are the questions that entrepreneurs need to ask themselves when starting a business?
Who is my customer?
Paul, I'm so glad you asked. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's my question. Who is my customer?
Yeah.
Because they don't, a lot of times they don't know who their customer is specifically like who exactly is your customer? Who are you building for? Why, what is their pain points? A lot of times people come up with an idea that is really a solution that they love to a problem that may not exist. So they're a solution in search of a problem instead of finding a problem and who exactly you're solving for. And then in the beginning, make it very, very uncomfortably narrow, right? Like, so I'm going to build for people who run veterinary clinics that have less than 100 clients that are in Atlanta. Right? So like start really small and nail that. And then your vision can be like, we are going to be Chewy, or we're going to do all these things for all these people, but start really, really slow first and then add adjacent markets otherwise. I think people think my customer is everybody. And if your customer is everybody, your customer is nobody, because you're not going to be able to speak the right language and the right messaging to them and really get to their pain point. And so that would be my advice, is really hone in on who is my customer and what is their problem that I'm solving?
Right. Never start your customer statement with anybody doing this.
Right.
Not the right move.
Yep.
All right. Well, so many questions still left, but David, I know we're out of time. So really thank you for spending some time with us today. Students, remember, please go to our website, supernovacommence.com. Sign up for the mailing list. We send out internships and grants and scholarships and all kinds of things. So make sure you're signed up for that. Next week, we have Dan Gordon, who is exec director at JBN Consulting right now, but he was past COO at Emory University, at City of Atlanta, and chief of staff at Emory. He also worked for Arthur Blank. So really cool guy, and we're going to talk lots of different things with him next week. David, do you have any parting words for our students today? Advice, anything?
The last thing too is like, I truly believe positivity and gratitude. And so like, it is really, I read somewhere that you can't be angry and grateful at the same time. So if you're constantly writing down, right, like what you're thankful for in your life, and that can be very small things. It could be numerous things that are going right in your life right now. Being grateful for those things just changes your mindsets. And so that's been really helpful to me. And so I think you don't have to have it all figured out right now. It's okay if you don't have it figured out. A lot of people, I still don't have it completely figured out, what life is going to hold. And that's the cool thing about it. The very cool thing about it is you guys are time billionaires, right? Like how much would someone who's in their 80s or 90s and has all the money in the world, would they pay you to get that time, right? They would rather have all that time that you have. So 1 billion seconds is 31 years. You have $2 billion worth of time right now for most of you. And so that's really exciting. And so with compounding, the long-term strategy, a lot of stuff is available to you in life, as long as you're not just focused on the short term.
I love that. Time billionaires.
Time billionaires. Warren Buffett would probably pay someone, if you could say, hey, Warren, I'll give you 10 years. He'd probably pay a lot of money for that, probably over $1 billion for 10 more years of life.
There you go.
Have that right now available.
So y'all should start working on a time machine or an anti-aging something. Start working on it. That could be a good business.
If you figure that out, I'll invest. Let me know.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, thank you, David. Thank you, students. Thanks for joining us this week. Remember, it's a blessing to be a blessing. Be grateful and show gratitude, as David is saying, as you go through your weeks this week. And stay safe and healthy. And we will see y'all next week. Awesome. Bye.
Bye.